Hey, folks, I just got the point, so I know I am allowed to talk. I am Al Ernst, and this is a quick episode to give you a little bit of a smile of what I call Here I Stand Up. No, it is not rehearsed stand-up comedy per se. It's a whole lot of my stories of not only 30 years of being a stand-up comedian on the road, but my 60 years of life and those little funny moments that maybe you probably had a million of them in your life. And my goal here isn't necessarily to tell you that I'm going to give you the greatest story ever. My goal here is for you to think back yourself and remember the moments that kind of made you laugh, made you smile a little bit. And today's, now that we are in the Advent season, once known as the Christmas season, but we have all learned this through go back on all your shows, you'll see what we're talking about. That I have to go back to, believe it or not, age, if you can believe I can remember this, age 7 years old. So when I was 7 years old, it was only my mom and I, and my mom worked the graveyard shift, the 11 to 7 shift at Sarasota Memorial Hospital. And therefore, obviously, my mom had to find a babysitter that would essentially house me overnight on all the nights that she worked. Sarasota was a little teeny town at the where we lived, was very close to what we call Pinecraft, which is the Amish Mennonite community of Sarasota, off of Tuttle Avenue.
Still is.
And it still is. And I don't know how my mom found this person, but believe it or not, her name was Rachel, and her husband's name was Amos. Now, so if you don't have more Mennonite Amish than that, it doesn't. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And Rachel and Amos were wonderful. I have nothing but wonderful memories of, trouncing, having my mom take me over there. Any night she worked, she usually took me over about 7 o'clock at night, so she could get a couple more hours of sleep before she'd go on into work. And I would spend the night at their house. I had my own little bedroom, and then in the morning, either she picked me up, or I was, as I even got older, those are the days you could walk yourself home. The only reason I say all this is because those of you that might understand the Sarasota area, that area around Tuttle Avenue, which I believe now is a school, it was once a dentistry area. It's a red brick building over near the corner of Tuttle and Bay Vista. Believe it or not, that was the Mennonite church for years and years and years. Their Christmases are Mennonite and Amish Christmases. I mean, very simple and very, oriented towards a heavy-duty emphasis on Scripture, and they live a very simple life. I mean, that is as we all know now. My babysitters, I believe, were Mennonite, which I know are not Amish, but many of the traditions. The males that were married had the beards. They all wore essentially the same clothing, and it was a very, very simplistic but yet effective thing. We get into the early late 60s, early 70s. This would have been the late 60s. This was the time that artificial Christmas trees had begun their stand. I had never seen one or known of one until that, my first memory. So if you can picture now this wooden 3-bedroom home that barely, it had electricity. It had one of those giant televisions that really was like a piece of furniture. They did watch TV, and a couple of rocking chairs, and I think a couch. But it was the simplest thing you could ever think of. And I would never think of Rachel and Amos as going out to do a Christmas that would be a what I want to say would be real spectacular. I mean, they weren't one to go to buy decorations necessarily or anything like that. However, the first year that these trees were really in vogue, somehow, some way, and this is why I tell you these are just honest stories that can make you smile. Rachel and Amos bought the most artificialistic tree, and I say it like that you could ever imagine, and it wasn't green, folks. In those days, everybody had different colored trees. This was snow white, purebred, the most, those things would draw blood, the needles that came off, and they had some tinsel that reflected, and you say, well, yeah, the year before they literally had a Christmas tree, believe it or not, that had lights that they lit candles, real live candles on. We moved in 1 year from that to this next Christmas of this super artificial tree, and it did not even have Christmas lights on it. It had a light that sat to the side that had a large plastic multicolored disc on it, and they plugged it in, and the disc would rotate around, and that would be what would give the Christmas tree color.
Wow.
On the and the smiling part of it for me is to say they really didn't put presents. There was usually maybe some bakery items or goods or everything like that, and this whole house still remained completely, to what I would say it looked like in the 1800s or something, except for this crazy tree that they somehow had to have, and I'll never understand it for the rest of my. And I kept asking. I said, Rachel, no, that isn't a real tree. I kept believing it was a real tree because there was no water, and I said, we got to put water. No, you can't. You don't put water in that. And what happened, as it turned out, she collected S&H green stamps. And those of you that are old enough out there to remember the old green stamps, and she redeemed her Christmas tree from the S&H green stamp place next to the Sears, and I will never forget that Christmas because it stands out as the rest of the house completely different and unique, and it gives me a smile to this day that sometimes even the Amish and the Mennonites end up doing something kind of crazy. So I wish you the very best of greetings, in that I want you to think of what were your funny Christmases. What didn't make sense to you as a kid that you thought this is the way it normally works. And with that, I send you greetings as we make the preparation. And until next week, we will be back again. That is my edition of Here I Stand.